Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Simply Nerdy. I'm your host, Steven. I'm joined today by a very special panel. We've got Austin and Anthony, but we also have Matt from Sonictoast, and we have Stealth from our Discord. Good and good friend.
Yes.
And we're here to review Sonic the Hedgehog 3 because we all saw it in theaters this weekend, and oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about. And yeah, let's just get into it. Starting with Sonictoast, why don't we start with you? What did you think of Sonic 3? We're going to have a spoiler-free section, and then we're going to get into spoilers and do a full discussion at the end. So yeah, this is the spoiler-free section. Toast, what did you think?
Okay, initial thoughts. I went in thinking there's no way this could be better than Sonic 2. And after the movie, I was just sort of like comparing the two movies in my mind. And I think I came to the conclusion that Sonic 3 is actually my favorite of the trilogy overall. That's my initial reaction. I'll popcorn to Stealth.
All right, so I'll agree is the best of the three, but I would say by far, because of one thing, it doesn't have the wedding scene of the second one.
Exactly.
Destroyed the entire second movie, even though I really liked it. Right. So there is no scene like that in the third one, which really helped the movie out. And also, I'm a Jim Carrey fan, so double Jim Carrey, and he did a really good job on this movie. So if you are a Jim Carrey fan, you will love this movie. I'll say that.
Oh, yes.
Who knew he could have so much synergy with himself?
So great. Oh my gosh.
It's more than it's Jim Carrey squared. That's it's just incredible.
Absolutely. I don't know how that man has so much energy, but geez. But watching him play off of himself was a treat.
Yes, it was hilarious.
And I will echo what Stealth said about this and Sonictoast, Matt, here, about Sonic 3 has definitely become my favorite of the trilogy as well. I love that we got more Sonic, more Tails, more Knuckles, more of the main Sonic characters and less of the humans. Though I will add, the humans that we did get was special and it was really good. It did not subtract away from the story. It was very well done, the human sections of this movie, and I really appreciated it. Especially the Eggman and the grandpa. Go ahead, Austin. Anthony.
I was just going to say, I agree. I think this movie brought a lot of similar vibes to what I was feeling when I saw the Mario movie, in that it was its own unique story in the sense of, obviously, as unique as you can get. They're not trying to follow the game one for one, a perfect adaptation. They're taking their own twist and they are spicing it up with some flair, some different things, whether that's different characters or different direction in the story, but keeping it very familiar. You know, they have a lot of really awesome Easter eggs. They pay tribute to a lot of old games that any Sonic fan would enjoy, and that's what they did with the Mario movie, and that's why I enjoyed it so much. And then, of course, as you guys mentioned, Jim Carrey absolutely stole the show. He was outstanding, just beaming from ear to ear the entire movie because of those sections where Jim Carrey was present. But the other characters too. I think it was Stealth. You had said that they didn't include a ridiculous scene like the wedding scene in 2. 3 is my favorite by far. Like 1 was pretty good. I really enjoyed 1. 2 was like getting up there, and then the wedding scene happened, and it was like just a little under 1 for me. and then 3 is like up here. Like 3, I really really enjoyed 3. So.
Cool. I guess that leaves me. I think it was a little bit harder for me to figure out where I would place this one. For me, I was kind of in the same boat as Matt when I was going in. I wasn't sure if it was going to be able to surpass Sonic 2 for me, and that is, I will admit, in spite of the wedding scene, I didn't enjoy that part either. The thing for me was that it was, I don't remember how long, 10 or 20 minutes, and it was painful, but then it was over, and I was able to enjoy for me, the lore of the additional characters, that's something that really elevated 2 for me over 1, is that, hey, look, it's more than just Sonic, and it's actually a Sonic-related, lore-related plot, instead of just Sonic is on Earth, and he is doing things. So, that was a big thing for me. And going into 3, at first I wasn't sure if it was going to beat it. And that was while I was watching the movie, because there was a couple things that I didn't love as much. I felt like of the 3, this one probably was had the most fast-forwarded feel to the plot points. I always struggle with that. When something feels like it's being fast-forwarded, and I can't really feel like, I can see how this character got from, the point A to point B in a reasonable way, then that's the kind of, suspension of disbelief I struggle with the most. I mean, sure, the parts when, they're breaking the laws of physics, and I'll get to this, I'll talk about that in the spoilery section. That part, if you know what I'm talking about, that part was like, okay, well, this is a Sonic movie, so I can live with that. But when like there's a part when it seems like there's some characters who are going to have a spat, and then suddenly they don't, and the reasons for it were not like very well delved into. It was just like, never mind, I'm good with it, and that bothered me. Like, that type of thing bothers me, and so this movie felt the most fast forwarded in that sense. However, lore-wise, this probably was the best of the 3. It actually starts delving into legitimate story sequences, like everything with Shadow and Dr. Robotnik's grandfather. Those are things like straight out of the games, not one-to-one. It's not one-to-one recreation. There's things they changed, but I think overall, what that did for me is, that, and of course Jim Carrey made me realize I think this probably still is my favorite, just with more caveats than the rest of you. I probably need to go back and watch it again now that I, know what to expect. But it was the scene when Jim Carrey and himself are dancing in a certain location was the most spectacularely hilarious thing I've ever seen. I couldn't help but nerd out with pure joy. This is the weirdest movie I've ever seen. It was just so I had a really good time. My main misgiving was trying to figure out where it places, and I think for me, probably here's 2 and here's 3, and it might go up higher the next time I watch it. The only thing I'll ask is just in the future, give the characters more time for development. That's what I want. Other than that, great movie. Those of you who have been with our channel for a while know how much we loved Knuckles, the show. That show was better known as Wade Whipple. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that Wade Whipple got like 30 seconds, maybe a minute of screen time, perfect. Yes. Yes. Like the scene with the 2 characters who were the main offenders from the wedding scene, they also get just about 2 minutes of screen time. Perfect. Yes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. Really well done.
All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I just want to get everyone's scores for the Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and then we'll get into the spoiler section. So why don't we start with you, Matt? Then we'll go around.
Oh, scores?
Again. Yes.
Out of 10.
Score this movie out of 10.
Out of 10? Okay. I'm not going to try not to be too biased, right? I guess I'll give it a 9.95 out of 10.
Nice.
Near perfection.
I mean, I wouldn't rate it that high because, this is still not Dune or something, but I'll give it an 8.
Steve, you're next in the
Me?
line.
I would give it a 9.
And I know that I'm notorious for being the harsher critic, but I actually would rate this a 9 as well.
Very nice. And I think after more consideration, I probably also would give it a 9.
And that brings the official Simply Nerdy score. If we average out everyone's scoring here, we get a 9.0. So a 9 out of 10 from Simply Nerdy. And that's our official score. And now we're going to get into the spoiler section. So if you have not seen the movie, go see it first. Because, yeah, we do not want to spoil this thing for you. You got to experience it for yourself. Come back when you're done. Here we go with spoilers. Who wants to start?
Let's go reverse order this time. Anthony?
That probably messed with me the most, just in terms, and not in terms of suspension of disbelief as far as realism, but just in terms of how I felt about the way that character development was represented. Was probably the part when Sonic is, basically spanking Shadow's butt and sends him to the moon. And that part was pretty spectacular. I was like, oh dang, he's flying into the moon. That was cool. But then they get there and they have just a little this minute-long heart-to-heart, and all of a sudden, Shadow is their best friends. And now they're they just gone from I'm going to blow up the world to, oh, you made me feel better. Now I'm going to help you save the world. It's just like that was the moment when, in all the other moments in the movie when it feels like things were fast-forwarded, that one was the one where I was like, no, that's not how people connect. It's you punched me in the moon. I like you now. And that's the funny thing, because like the reference I was making earlier, the part when I'm like, wait a minute, okay, they're sitting on the moon with there's no atmosphere on the moon. They don't have any suits or anything like that. Sonic drowns in water, but he's just having a hard push on the moon. Okay, like that's the part that I was like, all right, that's the part I just let go. But
same.
The moment when they're like, yes, we're friends now, that was too much for me. And again, that wasn't enough to make it a movie that I didn't like, but it was kind of the worst offense of something that I felt like the movie was kind of doing throughout. And it felt a little bit jarring to me because, in contrast, the sequence when they showed the flashbacks with Shadow and Maria, I thought that was really well done. I was like, yes. That's not even the games did that. I don't feel like I had a good sense of their connection other than that, he liked her and he was sad when she died. But the movie really delved into it, and it was enough that I was like, hey, look, they slowed down enough to give us a real good sense of the character development between the two, so that it really hits when you realize what happened to Maria. That was what I wanted more throughout the movie, and I felt like they were trying to pack too much in to be able to continue doing that with other elements of the show. So that was probably my biggest complaint.
Well, if I may comment, I very much see your point of view, Anthony. I can see how that can bother some audiences with them hanging on the moon. One thing I really actually appreciated about that scene, well, first of all, they don't address why they can breathe in outer space, but they can. They always have in the video games, Sonic's always hanging off the edge of spaceships and everything. If you watch the Sonic X series, the whole third season takes place in space, and they don't ever wear spacesuits. But anyway, that's not the point. What I really liked about that scene, actually, is that the whole thing of Shadow changing his point of view, turning good, joining the good guys, that happened in the games, it's happened in the cartoons, it happened in the comic books, but it's always been somebody else who kind of makes him realize it. It's always been like Amy Rose, Chris Thorndike, different characters. This is the first time it was actually Sonic and Shadow in that scene. And the way they the way they made, we saw this side of Sonic we haven't seen in the movies before, where he was kind of becoming Shadow himself, letting that anger take over him, but then he lets the things he's been taught overcome those emotions. And when Shadow sees that, that's what makes Shadow, Sonic isn't just telling Shadow, but he's also showing Shadow what he can be, how he can be better. And I really appreciated that. Yes, it did feel a little rushed, but I just love that it was that bond between the two hedgehogs that very much explains why they work so well together, while they're trying to save the world, because we always get that team up between Sonic and Shadow. It's like, yes, they're finally working together. Now they're unstoppable, but now we see why. And
Yeah.
It worked for me. I'm just saying it worked for me.
Yeah, no, and sorry, I'll just interject real quick and then hand it over to you, Stealth. The nature of their connection was not the thing I had an issue with. I like the type of conversation they had. I was like, yeah, that is really meaningful. It was. I just wish that there had been a little bit more lead up. Is all, instead of going from the galactic, world destroying space battle to best friends on the moon. If it had instead, like had some elements, like some moments, for example, in earlier interactions between Sonic and Shadow, where you could see Sonic kind of getting through to him, and because from what I remember, at least, all of their interactions was, "I'm going to beat the crap out of you," and then and then he does.
I think to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit there, Sonic himself was thinking, where would I be? I would be a completely different hedgehog had I not had the people in my life that gave me a deeper connection and love and support. And I think both Sonic and Shadow had their own realizations that they are very similar more than they are different. Shadow had that person that he loved, and of course they had to throw in their little morals of the story that you could always have you always have a choice, make good choices, and then of course that there are no winners in revenge, right? So Shadow ultimately learns that he is loved, right? And he can carry that hope and that love that Maria had for him, even though she's gone. Killing people isn't going to solve that. And then Sonic had the realization, remembering what Tom, I think was his name.
Yep.
Tom said to him, "It's what you feel in here." I don't remember what the exact line was. Maybe you guys remember better than I did, but it was kind of a wake-up call. It wasn't that it didn't need that gradual moment for Sonic and Shadow. It just kind of clicked for them, and they were like, "What am I doing?" I don't know. It didn't bother me as much, I guess, but.
Well, yes. I will agree to disagree.
That's fair. That's fair.
Zach, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I guess I'll play some devil's advocate too.
Oh, okay.
All right. It's beat up on Anthony time, but but I think there was a little bit of buildup because of when he hit Tom. You could see that there was some guilt in Shadow for a moment there, that he kind of hurt somebody else's family member. And obviously, it probably reminded him what happened with Maria.
Yeah,
and he did bury it there and say, I did what I had to do. Kind of, it ran off. So I think that seed was planted in there for a while.
Not a long while.
Not a long while, but yes. And I can agree with both of you on that thing. I loved the connection, and it was so good, so well said. The wording there was like perfect, and I love how that scene played out. But I also agree with Anthony. I wish it was a little bit more lead up, but I also agree with Stealth. There was a little bit of a seed planted there. So yeah, that was. It's such a beautiful message in this whole movie. I loved it. And the moment we got after that conversation, just geeking out about that whole thing, when the song "Live and Learn" came on, and
So Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was my childhood, and I remember, I still have very vivid memories. So Steven and I, we've been friends since we were kids, and I remember we were both there doing, so spoilers for the game, we were doing the final battle of the third playthrough, where it's the two, like the heroes and the dark side combined or whatever. You're fighting the bio lizard in space, right? And that song comes on, and I just remember we lost it. We were just sitting there like, this is the most epic thing I have ever experienced in my life. And there are few things that have managed to come close since.
It's true.
So I was sitting there like, that song did a lot of things, even just in the context of some of the complaints I'd just been talking about. That song comes on, I was like, oh my gosh.
Like, wait, like what? Can we get a replay?
I was doing the same thing though, man. It's freaking out. It's so good. And the way they put the orchestra with the music on top of it, I was like, oh my gosh. That was so cool. Music score. Amazing.
So at that scene, we got Supersonic and Super Shadow being like just amazing, but then we get like this freeze frame of them in space doing the poses. What'd you guys think of that?
That's straight out of
I just-
Sonic Adventure 2, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just did a
Except for
Sonic
Super Shadow.
Generations, and they had that in there. So I was like, oh, that's the pose.
Yeah, like they did the thing. I don't know. Tell you the truth, like I wasn't crazy about that. I don't like the little, like, very straightforward winks to the audience. You know, like even the line of it's like we're two characters being played by the same actor. Then they go look at the. I don't like stuff like that. I kind of wish it was just a straight narrative rather than wink wink. Look at us being so cool.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. Usually, I struggle with fourth wall breaks. Where sometimes, like, one of the things I dislike the most about sequels is the tendency for characters to come back as almost more like they're just mascots now. They're just, like, hey, look, I'm on the screen, everyone cheer and applaud. Like moments like that kind of usually bother me, but I think at that point I'd gotten to the place where it's like, this movie is very silly, and it's got Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey saying something like that, yeah, it took me out of the movie for a second, and I was like, oh, that was a Jim Carrey moment, not a Sonic 3 moment. It was still like, it was just another moment where I'm like, I'm going to just suspend my disbelief. They can breathe in space. Jim Carrey can talk to the audience. I'll live with it. Would I've appreciated the movie probably better without them? Yeah, but it was. I lived with it, I guess.
Without the Jim Carreys?
No.
Oh, without those moments. Thank you. Okay, I just had to clarify.
It's Jim Carrey.
No, thank you. Okay.
This movie's
By them, you meant those moments.
I meant the moment when they're like, we're the same actor.
Yeah. I by the same actor. Yeah.
I laughed. I was like,
That's the impression.
but
It did help me lower my guard a little bit. Because, yeah, I would agree with Anthony and even you, Matt. I feel like those moments can kind of take you out of it. It's just kind of like, why did you need it? But it did help me kind of, okay, they are just being extra silly, and it's Jim Carrey. Not that he should always just get a free pass because he's Jim Carrey.
yeah, it was short enough, and they did it. I feel like they didn't make a habit of doing it all the time. It was just, a point here, a point there. And so for me, it was just like, oh yeah, no, I can live with that. And I will say it did kind of prepare me to laugh harder at some of the more ridiculous scenes. That for some reason, the scene when he jumps on, his grandfather at the Christmas tree, I was like, one of those. It felt like one of those old Vine moments where it's just completely random, ridiculous nonsense for 7 seconds, and you're just like, what the crap just happened?
I'll just point in that my brother couldn't be here as he's working. He said that scene felt just like Dumb and Dumber, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I was taken back by that scene because, they used it in the trailer and everything. They put that scene out everywhere on the internet. And it was longer in the promotional trailers, like he does the shh, in the Santa suit.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
They cut it down majorly in the actual movie. So I was like really thrown off. I was like, well, what's going on? This 30-second scene is now 20 seconds. I was honestly confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like maybe what they were going for, the thing that part of what made it funny to me was the frenetic nature of that whole montage. Like, it just felt like it was, a bunch of crazy people on Fast Forward. That's one of the few times I can actually appreciate Fast Forward, is when they're trying to illustrate a slapstick kind of feel. So for me, I was like, why did he just do that?
And then when they end the scene with like them taking off their VR goggles,
that got me. I was just like, they didn't have the time to go out and have real grandfather to grandson moments, heart to hearts. It was just, it was hilarious.
it was perfect.
Yeah.
Some of those lines from Jim Carrey, like, I don't know why it made me laugh so hard. And the grandpa's like, I can't believe it, a woman in the military.
This movie has some of my favorite one-liners from Jim Carrey. the one that got me pretty hard, or at least the one that's easiest to remember, was "Oh, terabyte me."
Terabyte me.
Or the what was the line that he said when like why did you do that? And then he was like, oh no, he said like, look what I did, and he's like, look what you've done. That's what it was.
Oh, that's right. That's right. When they hit the moon.
I wonder if they're going to try and keep that in like the continuity when they do Sonic 4, you know, because now the world is going to have some sort of weird tidal issues. But
excuse me, but going back to Gerald Robotnik, one thing that I really liked in this one, because, you know, his character in the video games, in Sonic Adventure 2, where he was introduced, we see him as this maniac who had this big elaborate plan to destroy the Earth out of revenge. And, you know, he was executed by the military. But then as the games go on, like in Shadow the Hedgehog, and then this new one, the Sonic Shadow Generations, they very, very much redeemed his character, showing that he was such a good guy, that he was trying to save the world, cure all diseases. But he was just pushed over the edge with the death of his granddaughter. In this movie, I don't think we ever really see, like, his character's not ever redeemed, I don't feel, in this movie. He's just like the black and white villain, bad guy, worse than our previous villain, right? And I kind of like that, because I feel like all the Sonic characters who are bad always get redeemed at a point, always become good. And I kind of like just having a villain who stays a villain.
And dies to a bug zapper.
Yeah.
How he died was, I lost it when he just gets hit in the butt, flies in the air, and just disappears. And I'm like, that's how he died. It was a complete.
First thing that went through my head,
killed the movie.
The first thing that went through my head at that part was imagining that, like, someone playing Wario in Smash Bros. And they do a fart right at the top of the screen.
Hey.
All right, we're gonna have to make that video now.
Has Jim Carrey ever died in a movie before?
I thought in Sonic 2, perhaps, but no.
Well, that was faked. It looked like he died. They didn't show him
They
disintegrate.
didn't show him,
Yeah.
but I don't think he has.
That's a good question.
Maybe in one of the ones where he played a villain, and I can't think of any off the top of my head. But
Mask?
No.
no, he lived in Mask. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Good question.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, technically he still lived since he's playing two characters, so I don't know.
Well, but they both
They
got.
both died, though.
Oh yeah, I guess they did both die.
Because the
So
spaceship blew up.
he died twice. So
Has any character died twice in a movie, or has an actor ever died twice in a movie?
I mean, all I can think of is Tom Cruise. Damn,
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yes, that's true. That's fair. Yep, that was a good movie too.
So,
Anything else you want to talk about in this movie?
I wanted to ask you guys' opinion on Keanu Reeves on Shadow. This portrayal of Shadow.
That's a very good question. I loved him as Shadow.
yeah, I thought he did.
I think he nailed it.
You know, I thought he was good. I don't have any complaints about his performance or anything like that. I tell you the truth, I kind of feel like he was there more as a name to attract people. I feel like
That's
anyone
fair.
could have portrayed Shadow, but I mean, there's been a lot of talented actors in the past who have played that character just fine, and Keanu Reeves did great. I'm not like crazy about it. I think Idris Elba as Knuckles is still like absolutely perfect.
It's
I don't
gold.
think anyone will top that performance.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
either.
no.
I agree.
Keanu was good. I have no complaints about Keanu. I'm really curious to hear what Anthony's going to say.
I ended up enjoying his performance. I thought, at least in terms of how he pitched his voice, felt very Shadow. I felt like the only complaint I had is that there were a couple times when and I don't know if it was just the nature of the lines that Shadow was speaking in context, but some of them felt like very reading lines kind of feel for me, more than some of the other characters. Although there was some moments where Sonic was kind of doing the same. So, it wasn't just Shadow. that was my only complaint, though, and I think that probably ties into some of my earlier statements of, make sure you don't go so fast through a movie that you forget the humanity element. So
point.
It wasn't a huge thing. It was more just, there was one point when the way he said something in a moment of like, it was an emotional moment. I don't remember what he said, but the way he said it, especially in the context of the things he'd said just previously, I cringed a little. I was like, "Oh, okay, it's fine." That's about it.
Yeah.
One thing that all of our viewers need to understand, and some of you might already know this, I am very allergic to cheese in movies. I have a very, very, very low tolerance for cheese. And the way you define cheese is pretty hand wavy. So that's another thing I'll fully acknowledge is subjective. The Sonic movie, going into it, I knew, like, okay, well, this is a Sonic movie, so it's going to be a little bit sillier. And maybe it helps if I'll just give a quick definition of what I define as cheese. Cheese is anything that is not genuine. It's something that doesn't match with what the movie is saying it's supposed to be. So if you go into watching something like Dumb and Dumber, you're going to have it's going to be full of ridiculous slapstick moments, and so that's okay. That's not cheese. But if you have like some sort of, I don't know, like a super serious movie, and it's got these random ridiculous slapstick moments thrown in, that is cheese. And so for me, this movie had kind of established itself as a little bit more, whimsy and silly, and that was fine. But then there was this kind of random moment thrown in where Shadow says something that, like, I want that type of emotional representation, but when it's, in the context and the way it was performed, that was a little cheesy to me. So again, like, I don't instantly hate a movie if there's cheese in it. It's kind of what would you call it? Exponential decay. Like, my well, not exponential, more like logarithmic. Anyway, I can handle it to a degree, and then eventually it drops off. And this movie didn't hit that.
If you want an example of that, go watch our review of the Knuckles show.
That's true.
So let me guess, Anthony. It was the revenge guac.
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
That
was a Knuckles line right there. That's something Knuckles would say. It was weird coming out of Shadow.
Yeah. That part was a little yucky. That was part of again, I can handle it now and then. Anyway, I thought Keanu Reeves did a good job, and I think they should keep him on. But I would also, and it's not just his performance in general, I think I would change their approach to characterization in general, to make their growth arcs have a little bit more connecting tissue in between. That's my main thing.
Yeah,
all right,
I would agree.
I've pounded that nail on the head too many times, so
it's
all
a
good
point.
It's a good, very good point.
Yeah, and I'll agree with Anthony. I guess I did feel like Keanu Reeves could probably get a little more voice coaching if he does this again, because it felt like he was kind of an amateur at some points, which, I mean, he is. I think this is the first time he's ever done something like this.
Like voice acting instead.
Yeah, voice acting a character that you're actually not on the screen as.
Yeah. He's used to playing himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I was going to say. He was typecasted as this as himself. He didn't have to do very much and still portrayed Shadow. But I agree. I agree with what your sentiments are, that could have added a little more emotional pizzazz to it. But
yeah. But
for the record,
I did good.
Yeah, for the record, I would call him a good actor. I feel like he's just one of those, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He doesn't play characters. He is himself as a character in movies.
Tommy Lee Jones, those are all classic examples. They're just not.
And I feel like Keanu Reeves is kind of in a similar boat. Not maybe as much as like The Rock, but anyway. But to Austin's point, yeah, I would change just a little bit, but otherwise he did good. All right.
Yep.
Cool. I mean, also Keanu Reeves, he did his homework when he was cast as Shadow. He went through the history of the character, trying to learn everything about him, trying to learn his motivations and everything, and I really respect that in an actor.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
That's pretty cool. What else do you talk about?
Oh, so many good scenes with Jim Carrey. I just want to throw that out there again. Jim Carrey stole the show. He was so hilarious between the silly dancing scene with the lasers on the reflective gear that they were wearing, and also the praying mantis and scorpion scene. It's just so good. I
Had
love
too
it.
much fun.
Yes, he did.
Oh man!
And
When
all
Jim
the moments
Carrey's
in between.
fighting himself, that was hilarious.
I really want to get your guys' opinion on something that's been on my mind. So I feel like Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik had a beautiful send-off for his character.
Mhm.
Do you want to see him return in another movie, or do you think that was good, we're done with him?
Oh my!
That's what I'm trying to decide. In a lot of ways, and this might be unpopular of me, but I feel like in a lot of ways he really carried a big portion of the show. And so there's a part of me that's like, can Sonic 4 be as good without Jim Carrey? But at the same time, I don't want them to just bring him back just for that sake. Even if they're like, oh, he's not Robotnik anymore, he's playing someone else. That would be that would feel like one of those moments where they're just bringing someone in to be a mascot, to advertise, kind of thing. And I don't want them to do that. So I think if they're here's how I'd put it. I'm sad if Jim Carrey doesn't return, because just the energy he brings to the shows, like that he was a big part of why I enjoyed this one so much. But I don't want them to do it in a way, if they did bring him back, that would kind of go against the lore and the storytelling, which is probably the number one thing that I want to see more of in future ones. That was the reason I enjoyed Sonic 2 so much more than Sonic 1, and that was a big part of why I enjoyed Sonic 3 as well. I would love, I think if they find a way to, if they do let go of Robotnik and they focus on the next big arc in the lore and the storytelling of the Sonic universe, then I think it could still be pretty good. And I think there's a lot of cool things they could do with the direction they're taking it. Like Metal Sonic, I'm not a lore expert when it comes to that. So Matt would have to speak to that. But I feel like that's a pretty big part in the lore. And in fact, this is kind of a side note, but there was a person who did an animated series. It was called Super Mario Bros. Z, but it was actually more like Sonic related. So it was like a crossover between Sonic and Mario, but most of the characters were from the Sonic universe, and the main villain was Metal Sonic, that turned into a more powerful version of himself and was just basically, Dragon Ball Z-ing them to oblivion. And it was incredibly well animated. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I was very sad that he stopped making it. But that when I saw Metal Sonic appear in the end credits, I was like, ooh, and I immediately thought of Super Mario Bros. Z, and I was like, that would be really cool if they make him as dangerous of a threat as that animated series I watched. So that was cool. And then the introduction of Amy Rose, I feel like there's a lot of cool things they can do with just more of those characters. So I think they need to. What I want to see is I want them to lean into more of the Sonic characters and less of the human ones. I don't want them to write out the human ones necessarily. I think that would be, at this point, a little too weird since they're pretty well established.
They're really cool.
I will say, just as a side note, they're probably the weakest part of the movies for me. I feel like sometimes Tom exists to deliver lines, like the lines he said were meaningful, but it felt contrived in some cases. Like, you, I like you. Let's talk about your heart. Okay, that's the end of my speech. Like some sort of weird head talk in the middle of the movie. So like
Exposition, man.
Yes, exactly. So I want the human characters to have a little bit more character. But the main thing I want to see them really lean into the Sonic characters. This is a Sonic movie. I want to see more Sonic and his buddies. So, and also I hope that they make the only like exposure I have to Amy Rose as a character is from Sonic Adventure 2, and she just felt kind of like an annoying character in those games. So I hope they make her cooler here. I mean, she looks like she's supposed to be pretty awesome, the way they represented her. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Awesome.
I'm not good at giving short answers, so I'll just cut it off by saying I think that they could do just fine without Robotnik if they lean into the Sonic universe and really develop it. That's what I want to see. So, okay.
I want to hear what Matt thinks.
Yes.
Okay. I've been thinking about this for like 2 straight days now. So it seems like at the end of Sonic 2 and the end of this one, they leave it at a point where Jim Carrey can quit if he wants to, but they can always bring him back. There was one line that stood out to me. When he is firing Agent Stone, he says, like, I expect you to stay on until I can clone you. So it's very possible that there is a clone of him out there, or that the one that died was a clone of him, possibly. Maybe that's how he survived the part 2. Maybe he died in part 2 and there was a clone of him already. We now know that he has cloning technology, and maybe they'll lean into that to bring him back. But
Prestige.
if
Yes,
they can't
exactly. Prestige.
yeah.
Spoilers for the Prestige.
Sorry, no, but yeah, no. If Jim Carrey does not want to come back for whatever reason, I feel like Agent Stone will take on the mantle of the Eggman, of Dr. Robotnik. He will shave his head, he will fray his mustache, and try to honor, his predecessor and become the new villain, and they'll just call him Robotnik.
That's very cool, actually.
Yep, I can see that happening.
You can't have Sonic without Robotnik. Like, he's at the center of every conflict that happens in this universe, so you can't just ignore him. Though they did set it up for Black Doom. If anyone played the game Shadow the Hedgehog, they had, in this, Shadow wasn't created by Gerald. He just came from space in a comet that looked like Black Doom's, his comet tech or whatever. And so it's like almost like Dragon Ball Z. Maybe Shadow was sent to Earth to prepare the Earth for Black Doom's coming to come conquer or whatever. So I can definitely see Black Doom coming in a future story. Even the director, Jeff Fowler, he worked on the Shadow the Hedgehog game back in the day. So he said in an interview that they considered Black Doom. They said, no, there wasn't enough room in this movie for Black Doom. But I feel like that changing the origin of Shadow very much kind of prepared us to where there's an easy way to bring him into the story, and Black Doom could easily be the next villain.
Interesting. Yeah. This is delving into some lore that I had no awareness of. So
out of our field. I mean, hearing how bad that game was is probably a good thing, Anthony. But I don't know. Maybe Matt, is it good or not?
So I think that game is very unfairly judged. I believe it is whatever platform you are playing it on. If you play it on the PS2 with those wobbly knobs, there's no way you can play it. I think it was really decent on the GameCube, and if you're really into Sonic lore, it was like heaven to me, honestly. Just trying to piece together this backstory of Shadow, because you get some backstory in Sonic Adventure 2, but the music's so loud I can never really hear what the characters are saying.
Yes.
So I felt like Shadow the Hedgehog was that game that really answered all the questions, and it makes it even more convoluted. It's super convoluted, but for someone like me who enjoys the Sonic lore so much, it was just a dream. So I like it. If you're gonna play it on the GameCube. Don't play it on the PS2. I don't know. I've never played it on Xbox, so I can't judge that one. But I enjoy the game for what it is. I can kind of see why some people don't like it, but
I confess, I never even gave it the time of day because of its mixed reviews. I would need to figure out, first of all, though, if I could even fit it into my enormous backlog that's already going down.
yeah.
But, I probably just need to, do like a Reader's Digest catch up on the lore, because I'm intrigued. I mean, I honestly didn't realize that there was this much lore, which maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but always been a Sonic fan, so.
Shadow is like the lore character. Most Sonic characters just like, look, here's Mighty the Armadillo, here's Jet the Hawk. They just sort of show up, no backstory. But Shadow is the one they gave this huge, elaborate, and may I say very, very convoluted backstory to. And they just kept on adding more and more layers to it as they went on. So he's the story hog.
Well, I'd like to see more of that delved into, for sure.
I mean, if you do play the new generations, I think they had a recap before.
Oh, really?
I mean, that game was good enough that I would say it's on sale. Buy it. It's a great one to play after the movie we just saw.
Highly recommend. Shadow Generation.
Yeah.
So good.
Is it
Really good.
is it on Steam?
Yeah, it's on Steam.
Okay, I might have
Sweet.
to-
That's probably where I'll play it then.
On sale at the moment. I think it's $37, which is, if
Good
you've
deal.
never played the base game, it's a good deal.
Okay.
Sweet.
You know, I am curious. I'm going to ask you, Matt, since you're clearly the lore expert, how dangerous of a foe is Metal Sonic?
It really depends on which game you're playing. You know, most of the times he's just like a rival racer or something. But no, Metal Sonic can be extremely. It really depends on who's writing the story. He can be extremely dangerous. The one that I want to point to is the game Sonic Heroes, where Metal Sonic actually betrays Dr. Robotnik and locks him up. And he starts like absorbing more different kinds of technology and even like ancient powers from like Chaos, the god of destruction and stuff like that, to where Metal Sonic becomes a kaiju type monster trying to take over the world himself. And so Metal Sonic is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And I'm very curious to see what they do. From that little clip we saw, it seemed like they were taking a page from the British Sonic comic books, where there's like a whole army of Metal Sonics. And personally, I don't love that approach because it makes Metal Sonic seem like just a normal badnik that you can take out with one hit. I like the idea of him just being like a special, like a powerful badnik that, you know, everyone's afraid of.
I would agree. Yeah.
Well, it'll still be interesting to see. I already indicated that I have a convoluted perspective on his powerfulness out of a fan creation that is not canon at all. But that's when I saw that, I was like, ooh, you know, we'll see if he's as dangerous. Anyway,
Yeah. And Matt, what was the thing behind was it Metal Overlord in the Sonic Generations? Was that from Sonic Heroes? Or?
Yeah, that's from Sonic Heroes. That's when he, because Robotnik has the Egg Fleet, which is the whole fleet of ships in the air. Metal Sonic takes all the machinery and technology from the Egg Fleet and applies it to himself to become the Metal Overlord.
Ah, okay. Man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like there's a lot more lore that they could delve into in future movies, and that's exactly like I already said. That's exactly what I want them to do. If the Sonic universe is that lore deep, then let's just lean into it. That's what I want.
So, well, speaking of lore, last year they brought out a comic book called Sonic's 900th Adventure. And that was them adding up every comic book, every game, every cartoon show, and the 2 movies at the time, and it added up to 900. So this comic book was the 900th adventure. So, yeah, that means there's still 897 more stories they could pull from.
All right. Jeez. Well, that's intense. So, are those including like each episode of something, or? Because like I grew up, for example, watching the Sonic cartoon from I think it was the 90s. I just remember that the opening song was the coolest thing ever, and
Sonic the Hedgehog, right?
Yeah, yeah. The he can really move. Sonic. Yeah. He's got an attitude. Yeah.
They need to put that in the movie somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Well,
classic song.
That's quite the pedigree, and they've got plenty to pull from. So let's see more of that. A little less of the humans, unless the humans can become part of that lore in a meaningful way. Do it. Yeah,
absolutely. Please,
and bring more of that awesome, bombastic, Dragon Ball Z style battle stuff too. Because I have to say that moment when like all the robots explode in this giant expanding wave of fire, I was like, oh, more of that, cool. More lore, yes, please. I'm excited.
No holding back.
Agreed.
Oh, last thing I'll say, going back to the space thing, I wasn't having any problem with them being in space in supersonic form, but the moment they sat down in their normal forms on the moon, that's when I was like, yeah. Maybe supersonic form, and then I wouldn't have even batted an eye. Anyway.
Right.
But
Maybe they talk so fast it goes through the vacuum of space, you know?
There you go.
Right. Sorry, quick question. Let's just get a raise of hands here. Bet like the fight between Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 2, right in front of the Master Emerald. To me, that's like the ultimate fight in the series, right? But this Super Sonic versus Super Shadow fight kind of rivals it. What do you say? Which fight do you guys think is better? Who thinks Sonic versus Knuckles is better? Anyone?
I would have to watch Sonic 2 again.
That's where I'm at too. Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
I would vote for Shadow and Sonic. Personally, because I've seen them. I've seen all the movies, quite a lot. We are huge into movies in my house, and we watch a lot. That's at least one per day. So, and my kids love Sonic too, so we watch that one a lot. And I think I like this one with Shadow more.
All right, your decisiveness.
I'm going to be the opposite of decisive. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I literally can't remember. So
Here's how I'd say it. Narratively speaking, and we've already established this is my primary concern. Narratively speaking, I think the fight in 2 worked better, but the fight in 3 was much more exciting, and it was in outer space, and they were flying like crazy Super Saiyans. So
it was all over the place. It was
all over the world too.
All over the world.
Yeah, zipping across like the pyramids,
different locales, the explosions, the volcanic eruptions.
Plus,
I thought that was
live and
pretty
learn.
epic.
Live and learn.
And live and learn.
And live and learn.
I would probably put the shadow fight a little higher, but man, if they had done a little bit more of those narrative things that I wanted them to do, it would have been up here.
That's even the Sonic and Shadow fights, like without the Chaos Emerald, as Shadow's on the motorcycle and Sonic is just all over the place and Shadow's like taking shots at him. The action sequences in this movie were really cool. So, wow. Really well done. Well, thank you again so much, Matt and Stealth, for joining us today for this review. If you liked what you saw, please give us a subscribe, like, and ring the notification bell so you're notified whenever more content comes up. And thank you all so much for joining and for the discussion here. And until next time,
gotta go fast.
Nerdy. Gotta go fast. And you can't do that to me.
You're too slow.
You're too slow.